All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss all the tags. A lot of guys got tagged, and we'll tell you whether it was a smart move or not. Coming up next.
The blackout mystery remains.
Welcome to March Madness. Oh!
You just never know in the tournament who is going to shine.
Stream March Madness live on any device, anywhere, and be ready for anything.
Okay, franchise tag deadline came and went, and a lot of players got tagged by a lot of teams. Let's start with a wide receiver and Michael Pittman, who got the tag. Obviously, T. Higgins was tagged previously. We've talked about that. But Michael Pittman tagged on Tuesday by the Indianapolis Colts. He'll make $21.8 million, went over 1,000 yards this season. I like it because I think you got a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and you're sort of figuring out what the wide receiver market is right now. You don't want to pay him $30 million, but you probably pay him, I think, maybe $25 million. That's a lot for Michael Pittman.
That's a lot.
That's a lot when you say that. Ugh.
So yeah, me and Pete Prisco was just having this. We were just having this conversation at the tag deadline with the show on HQ, and then we actually did a show for HQ Spotlight earlier talking about this. And I'm like you, right? Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. You got a young quarterback, want some continuity. You got a big receiver on the outside that can go up and get 50-50 jump balls. He's a big target in the red zone, right? He's a guy that's been consistent, and I think that's why they did this, right? Where you want some continuity and consistency on that offense for your young quarterback. Why not bring your most consistent receiver back? Now, the $21 million for a receiver that muddles around 1,100, 1,000 yards in a 17-game season may be a little steep, right? It would have been interesting to see what Michael Pittman would have got on the open market. Now, he might have gotten more than this just because when you look at a guy like T. Higgins getting the franchise tag, right? And then Calvin Ridley, we thought maybe he would get the tag, but ultimately they decided to give it to Josh Allen. If he goes back to Jacksonville, then you're talking about putting Pittman out there with Gabe Davis and Darnell Mooney, right? So, like, when you look at that, Pittman's probably the biggest name on there, so he's going to get the most amount of money in free agency. But most people would say he's a 1B or maybe even a number 2, right? So, like, is $21.8 million too much for him? Again, I think it makes a lot of sense. I guarantee they try to make a deal to lower that cap number. Yeah. Ultimately, they're going to try to do that. But when you talk about pairing him with Josh Downs and then having Anthony Richardson be comfortable with two guys that were there the year before, I think it just makes too much sense.
Dude, I mean, the other thing too, like with Anthony Richardson, I mean, he looked like a much better thrower of the football, I think, than we sort of thought he might be early on. And obviously, he got hurt several times, knocked out for the season. Yeah,
stop running around like that.
I know, big, and that's the offense too. Shane saying big concerns about it. I think though that with like if you take Michael Pittman away from this offense,
that's what I'm saying.
Josh Downs is a great slot receiver, but he is a slot receiver. Like you need, those guys work hand in hand well together. So I the issue is like just looking at the wide receiver contracts. So Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill are the two highest paid guys at 30 and 28.
They're at 30, right?
Yeah, Tyreek's 30 and Devontae's 28. But those years they have dummy years on the back end of their deals. So like it's basically the agents, they just wanted to be the highest paid wide receivers when they got traded to their new teams. And so they did that. Realistically, the Cooper Kupp contract is the top at $26.7 million. Then you have Mike Evans right at $26 million per year. AJ Brown, 25.
The number just came out on that. I think it's more like 20 and a half. It's a lot of incentive based stuff.
Oh, is it really?
Wow. Yeah. I think the true numbers just came out. What makes sense, right? I think it's going to be 31 or something like that.
Well, I mean,
so
I guess
I 2 years. I think it's like 2 years, 42 mil he gets. Something like that.
Wow. That's interesting. Diggs at 24, DK at 24, Debo basically at 24, Terry McLaurin 23.2. And then you have Michael Pittman at 21.8 at the tag, and T. Higgins there, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, who's one of those guys probably getting cut, and then Amari Cooper and Chris Godwin all at $20 million. Mm-hmm. It's like if you can do a deal with Pittman,
I was like, do you put him in those category with those receivers?
I don't think he's not. Pittman is not yet an AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, but like, is he going to take $22 million? Like, is he going to take Terry McLaurin money?
You are what the market says you are, right?
Right.
I try to tell people that all the time. So, like, if he would have hit the open market, he probably would have got upwards to $23-24 million. So, like, if I'm the Colts, right, I'm trying to get that money around like 20. Like, if I can get him around 20, I'd feel a lot more comfortable than having to pay him like $24 million.
If I'm the Colts, I'm cranking up the guarantees on it. He's still a young guy. I'm cranking up the guarantees, get him a lot of total guaranteed money, and move, and get him in at like 22 million or something like that. So it's like, look, like a loaded guaranteed contract, but you're above Terry McLaurin, but you're not like, you're not Debo or like, right around 23, I think could work. And so
it'll be interesting to see what happens with Cup next year if the trajectory of Puka Nacua keeps going like it's going, and like, are they going to be willing to pay Cooper Cup the type of money that he's slotted to make?
Yeah, indeed. Chicago Bears are actually the cover story on CBSSports.com. My mock draft, in which I trolled Bears fans by trading away the number 1 pick to the New England Patriots for 3 future firsts.
Ooh,
yeah, I don't know. Like the trade market for Justin Fields has cooled down a lot. It feels like, and
man, especially with Kirk Cousins potentially going to Atlanta.
Yeah, like if you could trade down, get Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, however you want to do it. You probably get 2 of those guys, honestly, at 3 and 9.
I mean, if you traded 3, you still might get a quarterback.
Yeah, get 3 future firsts and take Jaden Daniels and hope it works out, or get an offensive, get Joe Alton. I mean, build your offensive line and build the receivers and build around Justin Fields. Who, like, this is not the worst team in football. They're picking 9th overall because Justin Fields got him there. So I don't know. I think that's kind of an interesting angle. But more importantly for this, it appears that some Bears fans disagree. Joe Musso says to count. I think
my guy Moose.
I think Musso is a loyal chatter on the Pick Six podcast, and we always appreciate it. Yeah, hilarious. And Harry correctly points out that I told him off camera that I was going to do a troll mock draft. Mission accomplished. Actually, last year I did the worst mock draft of all time. It was really well received. It did great numbers, but it was like designed to piss off every single fan base. Like I gave like the worst thing possible. At any rate, the Bears tagged Jaylon Johnson, underrated player.
Very much so. This one, I'm not surprised by the tag. I'm surprised the deal hasn't been done, because let's not forget earlier in the season last year, there were rumors that they were going to allow him to seek a trade, which I thought was a terrible mistake by GM Ryan Poles. Yes, he wasn't your draft pick, but you don't let homegrown talent, especially Pro Bowl homegrown talent, walk out the building, right? You pair him with a guy that you took last year in Tyreek Stevenson, who had a really good rookie year, and you have 2 lockdown corners. You already traded for Montez Sweat. Now you got to add another edge rusher. You know what's going to give that edge rusher more time? If you have 2 lockdown corners on the outside. We kind of saw the evolution of this Bears defense and how it changed right after the Montez Sweat trade, Brinson, where they were like a top 5 defense down the stretch of the year. They were the number 1 defense against the run. But in totality, if you look at what they did, like the last 8 games of the season, they were playing top 10 defense in the league. So, like, I think that's what Ryan Poles envisions. So I guarantee the tag is to try to get a deal done. You do not let talent like Jaylon Johnson walk out the door, long-rangey corner who has a knack for finding the football, can play press man, bump and run coverage, and also can play in zone as well. You don't let guys like that walk out the door.
By the way, I was looking at this worst mock draft ever, and I went Will Levis 1 to the Panthers just to piss off Panthers. but then Bryce Young was available, and CJ Stroud went to the Texans.
And it actually
That's unbelievable. And I had Lucas Von Ness going to the Packers. This is like
you actually had him going to the Packers?
Yeah, I think, but like Packers fans were like, we love that pick, so I couldn't even do a worst mock draft correctly, which is
I'd never loved that pick for them.
Yeah, which is kind of incredible. All right, Josh Allen, not the quarterback, the pass rusher, tagged by the Jaguars. We go and lump in Josh Allen and Brian Burns together, I think, just for the sake of time. 2 no-brainer tags, but 2 very different situations, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say the situations are not even close.
No, like Josh Allen for the Jaguars is a team with Trevor Lawrence, who's been, I think, not as advertised so far in his
I
career.
wouldn't pay him this early.
No, I wouldn't want to pay him either. He needs to show it this year. Has had some great stretches, but definitely needs some consistency and to sort of improve his overall game. The offense isn't great there. Pete Prisco's talked about that a bunch, but like the defense has to have Josh Allen. He was a viable defensive candidate, and like to me,
He
this
should have been in a defensive player of the year category.
And I think that this is a situation where you give him money, you pay him a ton of money. And because you're a team that in that division with that quarterback, you've been to the playoffs, you won a playoff game, like you have to pay the guy because you're in contention. Whereas the Panthers dues are like, how can you think like, oh, we'll pay Brian Burns for 4 years and we'll be good? You're probably just not going to be good for the 4 years. And that may be why they put the non-exclusive tag on him, hoping somebody comes to get him.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We'll start with Josh Allen, right? You got to get a deal done with him. I'm honestly surprised they haven't got it done because I know before last season he sat out of most of the offseason because he was disgruntled about his contract, rightfully so, right? He's been the main consistent guy on that defensive line getting to the quarterback. Now, we saw Trayvon Walker towards the end of the back part of the season really come alive, right? I believe he had, if not mistaken, I think 5 sacks in the last 4 games. So he really turned it up at the end of the year. Ended up finishing with 10. But Josh Allen was the main guy that consistently always got to the quarterback. You talked about the 17.5 sacks. And now, instead of being an outside linebacker in Ryan Nielsen's defense, he'll be an edge guy where he doesn't have to worry about dropping the coverage or carrying backside of the backfield. He'll be asked to go get the quarterback, play in and play out. I think Trayvon Walker will play a lot better because of that as well. So this is a no-brainer. Honestly, surprised they didn't get the deal done to maybe potentially tag Calvin Ridley instead. So that's another interesting thing that the Jacksonville Jaguars have to do, because if he does go somewhere in free agency, they're going to have to give the Atlanta Falcons a second-round pick. So that's probably working against them.
If he signs with Jacksonville,
it's a third, I think, right?
I think it's a second if he comes back to Jacksonville.
No, I think if he leaves, it's a second. But if he signs, I think it's a third.
Or
maybe you're right. Maybe if he does sign,
yeah. And so like they missed the playoffs, and that's like I think that they would love to bring Calvin Ridley back, but I think Cameron Wolf of NFL Network NFL Media reported that it's looking increasingly likely that Ridley's going to get to free agency, and that there are multiple teams that have him as the number one wide receiver.
You got to look at it with Pittman being tagged and also T. Higgins being tagged. It's going to come down to Calvin Ridley, probably Gabe Davidson and Darnell Mooney. Right?
Calvin's going to get $26 million a year. I mean, that's just free agency, right?
Yeah,
like, you are with the market.
I'm also afraid that the Jets want to pay him that. I just think his game and Garrett Wilson's game is too close. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him to come to the New York Jets. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad if the Jets went and got Gabe Davis.
Ooh, that'd be spicy. He fits well with Garrett Wilson.
He really would. I mean, the yards per catch, I think he led the league in the NFL. And then, like, when you talk about the target shares and what his catch percentages is, people look at me like he disappears. I'm like, well, he can't throw the ball to himself. Like, he's not playing quarterback. Like, as a receiver, you can only catch if you're getting the ball thrown to you.
I agree with you. But I was going to say, did you see the comp for Ladd McConkey? It was like
wasn't it Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, which is great. Like, I don't even work in my brain, dude. Now. That's wild. Yeah,
he's not just a slot guy. He can get down the field.
Yeah, I like McConkey. All right, the Bucs tagged Antoine.
Oh, but hold on, we didn't get to Burns.
Oh yeah, Burns.
I forgot to get this off my chest. What is up with your franchise?
They're trash. They're big trash, dude.
So let me get this. Let me get this straight, just for the viewers, so they can hear this. A few years ago, it was rumored that they were offered 2 first-round picks from the LA Rams for Brian Burns. They decided that wasn't good enough, which is crazy to me. Not only that, you didn't get an extension done with this guy. So why are you hog tying him if you're not going to trade him? So even if you do get an offer this year, it won't be 2 firsts. So you've already lost in regards to that trade if you do trade him away, because you potentially had 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. And like you said, they have so many holes. It would have made sense for them to trade him for those 2 first-round picks while the Rams were still trying to stay in the hunt of winning another ring. But yet you decided it wasn't good enough, and now you don't even want to pay, or you technically want to pay him because you franchised him, but you could have paid him before this season. And the number probably would have been the same as what it is going to be right now.
Mm-hmm. Dude, look, I'm not going to dog Dan Morgan for using the franchise tag on Burns here, because I think you had to do it. He's a 24-year-old edge rusher, and
Which
if you
is
let him
crazy,
walk,
still that
like
young.
I know it's nuts. He got drafted like 3-4 years ago. If you let him walk, or 5 years, God, dude,
5 years. That's what I'm
5 years.
saying.
He was like 19 or 20 when he got drafted. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's like the reverse of he's pre-COVID, right? I mean, like now these guys, like, I mean,
there's dudes coming in this year that are older than Brian Burns, and he's on the franchise tag.
Yeah, that's wild, dude. And he's like, you have Michael Penix Jr. has 1,600 attempted passes in college.
Yeah,
well.
I was about to say Bo Nix.
Bo Nix has 60 starts. It's crazy. But look, you look at the cost per year for edge rushers, and it gets a little dicey because Nick Bosa is getting $34 million per year on his monster contract. You can't, if you're Brian Burns, say that you're worth as much as Nick Bosa. I think it's a tough sell to even say I want more than TJ Watt, who's making $28 million a year. And
no, but to me, I think that the range was always like 24 to 26, right? And there was rumors that they didn't want to come up to that. And I'm like, why would you not pay him that? Like, do you know what the going rate for edge guys are right now?
Yeah. Well, and also the tricky part where they changed the defense last year. They moved to this 3-4. He's not nearly as good last season. Then they put the non-exclusive tag on him, which is inviting other people to come in and negotiate with him. But then if you sign him to an offer sheet, you have to give the Panthers 2 first-round picks, and the Panthers could match it. I think the Panthers would love somebody to come in and give him an offer sheet and collect 2 first-round picks. I don't think it would be that crazy, dudes, if the Rams came back to the Panthers and said, we'll give you this year's first-round pick for Brian Burns. It's a later round pick. It's not 2 first-round picks. And I think Carolina, if you get a first-round pick for Burns, you have to take it, right?
I think you do too, just because there's so many deficiencies on that roster, and who knows what you could turn that first-round pick in. You could even maybe trade back and get even more picks, because this is one of those drafts where you can get great offensive linemen late first, even into the second round, and that's what the Panthers definitely need. But they need playmakers, and this is a great receiver class as well. So talk about maybe getting multiple receivers, whether it's, you get 2 seconds because you trade out of the first round. You get an offensive tackle, a receiver to help Bryce Young. I think it makes a lot of sense. The only question is now,
will somebody trade for
actually, whether their strong suit was kind of like their defense, and now if you do trade Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu's probably going to hit free agency, you're left with Derek Brown, right? And you still got J.C. Horn, but he has to stay healthy. So now you're looking at your defense and what are the Panthers known for?
Right. What are the Panthers? Like, bad Bryce Young? And it's for Carolina. The other thing is, it's great that he's 24. You could sign him to a huge deal. You give him 4 years and you have him in his prime, but are you going to be any good? Like, the Panthers are very unlikely to be a good football team over the next 3 to 4 years. So to me, it makes way more sense to trade him. And I think you just pray and hope that somebody comes and makes him an offer. Antoine Winfield Jr., elsewhere in the NFC South, all-pro safety Antoine Winfield Jr. got the franchise tag. Once they signed Mike Evans, it feels like they're in a really good place with Baker Mayfield. I know there's been some reporting that that the Falcons could be interested, or the Patriots are bandied about. I think Baker loves the setup in Tampa Bay. Yeah. I think he likes the coaching staff, loves the GM and Jason Light. They get along really well, and rejuvenated his career. And the fact that they went out and signed Mike Evans and guarantee you're going to have Antoine Winfield Jr. again this year. This Bucs team, barring or depending on the Falcons situation at quarterback, should be the favorite to win the division.
If Cousins goes there, then it's a question. Yeah.
Barring
that. Yeah. When you look at the Baker Mayfield situation, it's interesting, right? Because had his best year with Dave Canales. We know he's now in Carolina as the Panthers head coach. So does that maybe have a bearing on what happens? Because we saw Geno Smith also have his best career year with Dave Canales as the quarterback coach, right? So if you're Baker Mayfield, you're not going back to Carolina, because Bryce Young is there, so you're not going to be the starting quarterback there. I'm like you though. I think he loves being in Tampa Bay, loves the staff. I think Mike Evans being under contract is also a thing that will kind of link him to potentially going back to Tampa. Now, the thing is, what are they willing to pay him, right? I honestly thought that they would try to work out a deal with Winfield. That way they could tag Baker for 38 mil, which you got to think Baker Mayfield's probably going to get it like close to 40 on the open market if Joe Burrow.
Yeah, he'll be somewhere. He'll be 30 million for sure. Like at least.
Yeah, so like I would have tagged Baker Mayfield honestly to try to work out a deal with him, and then try to work out a deal with Antoine Winfield. The only thing is the way that Antoine Winfield played and the way he plays in Todd Bowles' system, like he's literally their Swiss Army knife. You're talking about a guy that can play deep middle field safety. He can play in the box. He can play slot corner. Had over 100 tackles, 6 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. He is just a player. And if you look at guys that are in this mold, Derwin James, Minka Fitzpatrick, they're making upwards to $18 million. So it made a lot of sense to tag him. I just would have tried to work out a deal with him. That way I could tag Baker Mayfield while we work out a deal. But ultimately, I believe all 3 of these guys will get on the contract. I don't believe they want to keep Antoine Winfield under that franchise tag. I think they want to lock him in because he's a main cog on that defense.
I agree completely. By the way, 3rd highest paid safety now by average annual value.
Right behind those 2.
behind. I mean, and like he fit like, and then Jesse Bates right behind him. Harrison Smith, obviously getting up in age at 35.
I was a little surprised that Jesse Bates didn't get close to that Minka deal, just because he's a hell of a ball hawk.
And he hit free agent.
That's what I'm saying. I was a little surprised. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that they ultimately work out a deal. Ravens franchise tagged Justin Madubuike. I mean, talking about a guy who burst on the scene.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, he had more sacks this year than he had in his entire career, I believe.
Yep. First.
Yeah. Oh, God, by a mile. He had 8.
I think it was 8.5,
and then he went to 13. Yeah, 13, 56. So excuse me. The quarterback. 33 quarterback
hits was 1 for defensive tackles.
Yeah. I mean, just an unbelievable season. 26 years old, breakout in Mike McDonald's defense. There's no chance the Ravens were going to let him walk because he was probably sprinting to Seattle, and getting
for sure. If Seattle had the money to do it, but just looking at Justin Madubuike, we've seen an evolution in regards to these pass rushing defensive tackles getting paid finally like edge rushers, right? Because if you can affect the quarterback more so up the middle, internal pressure, quarterbacks hate that. They despise that internal pressure.
I actually think the tag number might tell us those tag numbers, Harry. I think the tag number. I think
his tag is 22.8 or 21.
Look at this. Defensive tackle is higher than defensive end.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, you got to curtail that, or you have to tweak that because the outside linebacker, that's technically an edge guy. So, right. You got to think about that. Like Josh Allen and Brian Burns, they fall under that.
Fair point. Yeah, they fall under the linebacker. Which, by the way, fix that in the next CBA. Give us an edge tag, edge tag number. Yeah, it's crazy
for sure. Which they probably don't want to do because honestly, that edge tag would probably be like 30 mil. Like, to be honest with you, it'd be close to quarterback money because you just talked about Nick Bosa making $34 million. And you got to think Myles Garrett is probably going to be looking to redo his deal very soon and probably top what Nick Bosa did. So, getting back to Justin Madubuike in regards to, him getting the tag. I said this earlier. I was like, there's no way he's not getting the tag, right? Because if you look at what he's done, he was kind of on that Quentin Williams trajectory, right? You talked about his first 3 years having 8.5 sacks and then not doubling that, but almost doubling that in one season. Quentin Williams did the same thing before he got paid from the New York Jets. So you talk about, the player just now hitting his stride, right? He's in the middle of his career at 26 years old. This is when he's going to be playing the best football of his career. The Ravens have been known to work out deals. We saw that with Lamar Jackson. They gave him the tag. They ended up working out that deal. They'll work out this deal with Justin Madubuike because they're going to lose so many guys on defense.
Yes.
You got to have him in the middle of your defense. You're going to most likely lose Patrick Queen. Probably going to lose Geno Stone, right? You're going to probably lose Jadeveon Clowney and Van Noy. You got to have one of your key cogs back in the middle of your defense.
Brent Urban, a free agent too. I count 13 total free agents, including Madubuike. Well, I guess 12 now with Madubuike not being a free agent.
Good portion of those guys on that defense that was so good.
Yeah, and if you before Madubuike got the tag, 5 or 6 starters on the Ravens defense who are free agents, and you lost your defensive coordinator. So there's just a lot of change coming. Although I think a lot of people are really high on Zach Orr and think he'll do a great job.
Oh, yeah, he's gonna be a good coach.
The Harbaughs are just great at hiring. They do like they don't miss on hires ever.
Well, I mean, this lets you know how special they were. Not only did they lose Mike McDonald as the defensive coordinator, he went to Seattle. They lost, I believe, their defensive back coach and became the D coordinator in Miami.
Oh,
so, I mean, when your position coaches are getting D coordinator jobs, when the D coordinator actually leaves, that lets you know.
that lets you know that the coaching staff is kicking tail in there.